I am really digging what's going on so far with House of the Dragon. This is the last one. This is the last episode we get with some of these cast members. They're switching it next episode, and I don't know how I feel about that yet. I'm only going to know when we actually get there. Episode 5 is the last time we're going to get to see the characters who play Rhaenyra and Alicent Hightower as those young characters. Next episode, episode 6, it will jump forward significantly in time. We don't have an exact time frame on that yet, but the episode 6 preview gave us a hint that it's going to be, we're looking like 10, 11, 12, 13 years, something like that. Episode 5 was so tension building. You've seen all these pieces be moved around the chessboard throughout the first 4 episodes. You see small alliances starting to form. You start to see why, inevitably, down the road, there might be this big civil war. There might be the dance of the dragons. This episode really put that in the forefront. You finally see a life get brutally taken, and you also see another person die, whether that was a murder, whether that was just a lucky accident. I suppose that's yet to be known for certain, but I do know I was entertained for the whole thing. There's a lot of politicking, obviously, in this episode that goes on, and in the scene, in the feast scene, where a lot of people that are going to be involved in this going forward, they're all watching each other. They're all learning things about each other. I thought it was a great payoff at the end, and the last shot we saw was a huge potential foreshadowing of something to come. When we last left House of the Dragon in episode 4, we obviously saw the entire thing go down between Rhaenyra and Daemon Targaryen. And when King Viserys confronted Daemon, instead of being honest that, yeah, actually nothing went down with Rhaenyra, he lied. He basically let Viserys think that he and Rhaenyra fucked. As a result, Viserys said, go back to the Vale, go back and be with your wife. Well, the first shot we get is actually of Daemon Targaryen's wife, which we have yet to see in this series at all. She's only been referenced by Daemon specifically, Lady Rhea Royce, and this is her cousin. We get a little bit of him later. She just says, hey, I'm going to go off and go hunting for deer. So we just get a little shot of her going across the countryside. She's a very competent hunter. She's known for that. She comes upon this dark, mysterious figure. She immediately knows it's probably her husband. Now, she is a pretty cold woman. We've heard Daemon talk about her. We've heard Daemon say, oh, you know, there's sheep in the Vale that are prettier than her. We've heard Daemon call her the bronze bitch, all this stuff. Well, it's clear that she knows of all the things he said. It's also clear that as mean and as much of an asshole as Daemon is, she's just that much of an asshole too. Because she starts taunting him. Oh, what are you coming back here for? You sad that you got replaced by a girl, knowing that Rhaenyra is the heir to the throne. Just mocking him, really. Daemon gets closer and closer to the horse. Doesn't say anything to her. Just continues to get closer. And the horse is starting to back away a little bit. She even goes and say, hey, are you actually going to consummate our marriage now? Realizing that they've never actually fucked. And as Daemon continues to go closer and closer, she realizes something's up. She realizes Daemon might be here to kill her, potentially. She doesn't know. She reaches and grabs for her bow. She asks if he's actually going to strike Rhaenyra down, or are you actually maybe here to take care of me? So maybe you can get what you actually want, because we know Daemon wants to marry Rhaenyra. Well, sure enough, as she realizes he might be here to take me out, we see her actually draw her bow, and horse falls back on top of her, and she's effectively paralyzed. Now, was this Daemon's plan? Did Daemon go there to spook a horse? Did Daemon go there to try to do that? I don't know. We know that this horse is clearly a little spooked by Daemon. Daemon probably smells like dragon, like they established early in episode 1, one of the very first lines we hear in this episode. Was Daemon trying to help calm the horse, or was he intentionally trying to spook the horse? Either way, doesn't much matter, because Lady Rhea is now on the ground. His wife is on the ground, broke her spine, can't move. He looks over her, doesn't help, just walks away. And she actually goes further and says, of course you couldn't finish. Taking another shot at his potential impotence, which Daemon is not impotent. We're going to find that out later in this series. He's very much not impotent. But that says to Daemon, well, maybe I need to actually finish this. He picks up a rock, and whether he actually uses this rock to bash her head in, whether he puts it behind her head to try to stage it, nobody knows. All we know, things are probably not going to go well for Daemon's wife. We fast forward to Viserys, who's on a boat. They're headed to Driftmark because, of course, he wants Rhaenyra to get married to Corlys Valerian's son, Laenor Valerian. Viserys looks like shit. Throughout this entire episode, Viserys looks like he's about to die, because he is. He's just really sick. We've seen it continuing to get worse and worse over time. It's really played up here, especially as he gets seasick sick. He looks pathetic. He's barfing over the side of the ship. And you do get to see that Lionel Strong is the new Hand of the King. And we get a little shot knowing that Kristen Cole is on board with Rhaenyra as they go to Driftmark. Kristen Cole and Rhaenyra in the last episode got it on, where Kristen Cole broke his vows, the vows of chastity as a member of the Kingsguard, and he and Rhaenyra fucked. Now, whether he had a choice in that matter, that's up for debate. Certainly seems like he was very reluctant to do so, and that Rhaenyra forced him to. Now, I don't think it's rape, as a lot of people would like to say. I guarantee if the situation was reversed, you'd see a lot of feminists out there saying, look at the position of power she used over him. But 100%, she used her position of power and authority to get Kristen Cole to fuck her. You can't really argue that. Well, now they're headed together to go to Driftmark. Go back to King's Landing for a second, and we see in the Red Keep, Otto Hightower is getting ready to leave King's Landing after he's been summarily dismissed by the king. The king realized, and he has for a while, that Otto Hightower's been manipulating everything. He's been trying to set all the pieces up so Aegon, his grandson, can take over the throne. He wants Aegon to be the heir. He's already manipulated Viserys into marrying his daughter Alicent. You have a really interesting sequence here, because Alicent Hightower is coming to say goodbye to her dad. Otto Hightower blames her. It's like, this is your fault. You're the one that decided to take the side of your friend. And because you did that, the king was influenced. The king decided to believe Rhaenyra, and the king decided to get rid of me. You have brought this upon our family, Alicent. She kind of says back to him, listen, this is part of your problem. She says, this is your doing. You are one of the people that decided to push so strongly for Aegon to be the heir. And if you hadn't been pushing so hard, this wouldn't have happened. And Otto Hightower makes it very clear to Alicent, if Rhaenyra is to become the queen, if she's to take over, things are going to go very badly for this realm. There will be war because a lot of people won't respect her as queen. A lot of people won't accept a woman on the Iron Throne. That's just the reality of the situation. So if you don't want war, if you don't want all your kids and yourself to be put in the line of fire for this war, you'll do everything you can to make sure Aegon becomes the heir. I really liked this scene and what we got to see from Alicent in this. To this point in time, Alicent hasn't really shined too much on screen for me. This episode was a time for her to shine. And she realizes that because of the things that she directly did, because the choices she made, because she decided to believe Rhaenyra, that's what led to her father going away. And it does seem like Otto Hightower, even though he's in it for himself, he actually thinks this is the best thing for the realm. He worries for the realm if Rhaenyra gets the throne. We go back to Driftmark. We see Viserys coming in, looks like shit, as Viserys usually does, and there's nobody there to greet him. Now, Laenor and someone are sitting there, they're fencing, they're having a sparring match. He's known as the Knight of Kisses, and his name is Joffrey. We're going to find out a little bit later, just like in the books, that Laenor and Joffrey are rather close, and it's not really that much of a secret that they're close. Well, they come in, and it's basically, where is the greeting? King Viserys has come all the way down to Driftmark to see Corlys Velaryon. This is the greeting that we get. Nobody out here to actually greet us or bring us in, welcome us in. Not usually how kings are seen. Lady Laena Velaryon does come out. Her and another one of her brothers, they come out and they say, hey, Corlys just got back from a trip. He's going to see you in the throne room, whatever. And Viserys just wants to get it done with. Viserys like, whatever. Lionel Strong, don't make a big deal of it. Let's just get through this. Now we go back to King's Landing and we see yet another Godswood. A lot of things taking place in the Godswood. Interesting, isn't it? I wonder if that'll come into play later on. But Alicent is in the Godswood with Larys Strong. So this is the one who is known as Clubfoot Strong. He is inevitably going to be the Master of Whispers. I don't know if he actually has that role yet. That's the role he will play later. And he makes some comments about an outsider very much thriving. He's talking about this plant, but really he's talking about Alicent being an outsider to this castle, coming in and doing well and continuing to thrive. He mentions something about Rhaenyra. Says, I really hope the princess is doing okay. She seemed to be a little bit sick. And Alicent's like, what are you talking about? She's not sick. She just took off and left for Driftmark. He says, oh, I was just wondering because I saw the Grand Maester gave her some sort of tea. Personally took it to her room. So I just assumed it must be something pretty bad if the Grand Maester himself is bringing her some sort of brew, something to help her feel better. Alicent sits there and thinks like, what do you mean the Grand Maester? Why? The king ordered the Grand Maester to deliver something to Rhaenyra's room? It's intentional from Larys Strong. He's doing it to make Alicent come to the realization that maybe Rhaenyra lied to her, that Rhaenyra lied about what happened. Now, everybody is still thinking that Rhaenyra and Daemon potentially fucked. That's the question at hand. They don't know about Kristen Cole. So Alicent is thinking that Rhaenyra lied to me about Daemon Targaryen. Now we get a meeting between Corlys Velaryon and the king. Corlys Velaryon is sitting on his throne effectively. It's a little bit tension-filled because the last time these guys saw each other, they weren't very happy. Corlys Velaryon was not very happy. He left, went to the Stepstones to fight a war with Daemon Targaryen and kind of abandon the king. Well, now the king has gone all the way down to Driftmark to ask him for something, and you have a moment where you're not sure exactly how this tension is going to play out. Well, he does eventually bend the knee to the king, says, "Your grace." Viserys, as he's walking through, is like coughing the entire time. They're making it very aware to everybody that Viserys is continuing to decline in terms of his health. Then we see Rhaenys Targaryen return, Viserys' cousin, and she shakes his hand and realizes that he's had 2 fingers amputated, which is kind of weird. And everyone's asking, Viserys, you need a chair or something? You want to sit down? You don't look very well. And he says, no, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. So they're discussing essentially all the things that are happening in the realm. Corlys Velaryon says, condolences to the Royce family and to your brother Daemon. We just got word that Daemon's wife passed away. Some hunting accident crushed her skull and her back or something like that. And everybody is like, that's a little strange. That's a little convenient that his wife that he hates just so happened to have a hunting accident, who's really well known for how good she is on horseback and an excellent hunter, just happened to have an accident and died from it. Well, anyway, moving on, because they all kind of understand Daemon likely had something to do with this. Now we get to see what Viserys is actually here to ask Corlys Velaryon to wed Laenor Velaryon, his son, with Rhaenyra Targaryen, the heir to the Iron Throne. Corlys is okay with this, but he has one request. He says, I want, in keeping with all our traditions and customs, for any kids from this marriage, be actually given Velaryon as their last name, because they normally would if it's the father. Laenor Velaryon is going to father children from Rhaenyra. I don't want them to have the Targaryen name. I want them to have my Velaryon name. And it's kind of a compromise, because Viserys is like, I tell you what, when they're born, they can certainly have the name Velaryon, just like their father, just like in keeping with our customs. But if any of them ascend the Iron Throne, any heir, like the heir to the throne, when they ascend the throne, they will change their name and they will rule as a Targaryen, as our customs maintain. Everybody is fine with that. That is the compromise that they actually will agree on. Laenor and Rhaenyra are getting to know each other a little bit. They're taking a walk on the beach. It's pretty obvious that neither of them wants this. They both say that. Rhaenyra says, hey, I know we didn't choose this, but if it could be anyone, I'm happy it's you, because they do know each other. They are related. This is a pretty common thing for cousins to marry each other, brothers to marry sisters, things like that. Laenor says, I know that this isn't what you wanted, it's what I wanted. So it's a little bit irritating, because now I'm just going to be forced to spend the rest of my life with you, and that's not really what I wanted. The truth is, everybody knows a secret about Laenor, and that's that he doesn't like women. I saw some people on social media being like, I can't believe they put a gay character in this. Laenor is gay in the books. It's very well known that he was rumored to like the presence of men. And it's one of the reasons why later on in this series and later on in the book as well, you get questions about paternity when it comes to Rhaenyra and Laenor's kids. One of the reasons that I really don't think they should have done a race swap for the Velaryons, you could have done it for a lot of other people. Specifically, I think Velaryons is one of the worst choices they could have made, but that's one of my main criticisms of this show. Overall, still really enjoying it. Obviously, you do have to just point that out because it's pretty obvious. However, Laenor is gay. Laenor does not like women. He prefers the company of men. They mentioned in the book, and it's mentioned here as well. Rhaenyra uses some sort of analogy. She says, I understand what's going on, Laenor. Some people like goose, some people like chicken. I really like chicken. I don't really like goose. I can't really tell you why I don't like goose, but I just don't really like it. I just prefer chicken. And she says, what I would like us to do is do our duty, what we need to do for the realm, what we need to do to strengthen our families, but not limit ourselves to just being with each other. Just do whatever we want outside of it. She's essentially telling Laenor, let's get married so that everybody can see that we're married. Let's do what we have to do. But I might have somebody that I want to keep fucking, and I know you probably want to fuck somebody else too because you're gay, and I'm cool with it. But let's just do this for the realm. And Laenor's like, I am totally 100% down with that. We go back to Corlys and Rhaenys talking about this. Rhaenys brings up, you're kind of putting your son in a little bit of a bad spot. Rhaenyra is the heir to the throne, but there's going to be a big challenge. You saw what happened when I was potentially considered. Nobody really respected it. That's just the reality of the situation. I've gotten over that. I don't want the throne. I don't want anything like that. But when it happens with Rhaenyra, there's going to be a big war, and you're putting our son in the middle of it if you agree to this marriage. Corlys is in complete denial that Laenor's gay. Corlys is like, oh, he'll grow out of it. Kids grow out of these things. But Corlys says, we have the biggest fleet. We have a ton of money. We have a bunch of dragons, more than anybody else does, because obviously Rhaenys is a Targaryen and her children are Targaryen bloods, even though they're the Velaryons, just like we saw with Laenor, they are able to ride dragons. So they have a lot of dragon riders and a lot of dragons on Driftmark. He says, if the challenge comes, we'll meet it head on. And it's almost from Corlys, it just seemed like he has a bone to pick because of what happened with Rhaenys, even though she says, I don't want you to try to like get back at anyone over this. Now we get introduced to Sir Joffrey, the Knight of Kisses. This is Laenor's gay lover, and he's pretty happy about the situation because it's better than they could have really hoped for. They never expected when he eventually did have to get married that he'd be allowed to keep fucking whoever he wanted. But that's the proposition that Rhaenyra has made. Now we go back and we see that Rhaenyra, Criston Cole, the king, everybody back on their way to King's Landing. And we have a scene between Rhaenyra and Criston Cole. Obviously, like we talked about before, in the last episode, Rhaenyra convinces Criston Cole to sleep with her, to break his vows and to be with her. And with this trip, with her now being betrothed to Laenor Velaryon, Criston Cole has something he wants to get off his chest. He tells Rhaenyra, I've spent a lot of time with you, princess, over the past several years. I've heard you confide in me a lot. You've told me a lot of things. You never wanted to do something like this. You don't want to get married to somebody that you don't love. You don't want to do, you hate like the duty that's been thrust upon you. I know a lot of things about sailing. I know a lot of different places away from Westeros. We can go to Essos, things like that. Come with me. Let's just leave all this behind. You leave your crown behind. You leave your duties behind. I'll drop my white coat. I'll do a lot of that stuff. Let's just live together with people who actually want to be with each other. And Rhaenyra's like, I mean, I appreciate that, Criston, but I can't do that. I can't just leave everything. Even though I've been pushing aside my duties for a long time, I realize that I do have a responsibility. It's something that I need to do. And maybe she even wants to rule at this point in time. Then she says, but it's okay, Criston. I made a deal with Laenor. I know he doesn't like to fuck women, and I'm not really interested in him. But I made an agreement that we can just keep doing whatever we want. So you and I can still be together. And Criston Cole's like, well, so I'm just going to be your whore? And Rhaenyra's like, basically, yeah, that's what I want you to be. I just want to keep sleeping with you while I marry Laenor. We can keep having sex. That's what you want, right? And Criston Cole gets really upset because he explains, before I was part of the Kingsguard, I had nothing. I had nothing. I worked and I fucking scrapped. I did everything I could. And finally, like being known as someone in the Kingsguard, this is everything I had. And I took an oath, Rhaenyra. I took an oath of chastity. I took an oath to the realm. And we broke that. You made me break that. And now you're telling me like that it's for nothing? At least if we would go away, at least if we could live together, then it'd be for something. But now you don't even appreciate what I did. I could be killed because of what I did for you, because of what you made me do. And now you're just saying, we can just keep fucking. You can just keep breaking your oath, but I don't really ever want to be with you or anything like that. And he is pissed off. Nothing Rhaenyra says can calm him down. He walks away. I mean, listen, I think a lot of people would take her up on the offer, but Criston Cole, no, because he's realizing that everything that he just sacrificed doesn't matter anymore. Well, now we go back to King's Landing and we see Alicent is watching as the king gets back, and the king fucking just collapses as he gets out of his carriage, gets back to King's Landing. Now we have a very interesting scene. Criston Cole, who's just returned to King's Landing, gets called by the queen, and Alicent has decided she's going to question Criston Cole because obviously, as the protector who's closest to Rhaenyra, would probably know the most about anything that Rhaenyra did. Criston Cole gets drawn in and he gets essentially confronted by Alicent, who says, I have some rather interesting questions to ask you, very delicate questions to ask you about the princess. She goes into, I know things like this are very delicate and it's tough because you don't want to question Rhaenyra's virtue. She's the princess. I don't want to question her virtue. That'd be a terrible thing for me to do, but I do need to know some things. And Criston Cole, you can see everything going on in his mind as she's talking to him about this. Oh, there's a lapse of morals going on. You can see the guilt that he feels. And he says, it's true. It happened, Your Grace. I did this thing. I took the princess's maidenhood. And Alicent was like, what the fuck? Like her reaction's like, what the fuck? That is not what she expected to hear. She was going there to talk about Daemon. But instead, Criston Cole admits everything that happened because of the way that it was presented. Because of how vague Alicent was being, Criston Cole assumed that she knew that it was him that was with Rhaenyra. That throws Alicent into kind of a, what is going on here? What am I supposed to do with this information? I thought I was going to get information about potentially her and Daemon because she swore to me that her and Daemon did nothing together. And she also swore that she was still a maiden, that she still was a virgin. Well, now I'm finding out that, well, maybe nothing happened to her and Daemon, but she's certainly not a virgin anymore with what I know. And Criston Cole says, please, I ask you, just have mercy on me. Just kill me right now. Give me a swift death. Don't torture me. Don't do any of that shit. Alicent lets him go, which is a little bit unexpected. He's not quite sure what to think about that, but he does leave. Now we see the king being attended to by maesters. There's two maesters right here. One of them is saying, saying, oh, we're going to use these leeches. The other maester says, I could do this like herbal remedy for him. And the maester overrules and says, no, the king has always really liked the leeches and the effect the leeches have on him. This goes into the whole maester conspiracy. Maybe the maesters aren't doing everything they potentially could to make Viserys get better. That might be something we get into later on in this series. But you see Viserys with his arm just looking like gross and disgusting. The same arm that he already had 2 fingers amputated on. He knows he can't live that much longer. He knows he's withering away, that he's dying. And he's talking to Lionel Strong, the Hand of the King now, and saying, how will people remember me? When I'm gone, what will the people say? I never fought or conquered, but I also really never had anything bad happen to the realm. I never suffered any great defeat. Are people even going to remember me? And Lionel Strong tries to put it in perspective and say, listen, King Jaehaerys before you had a great reign and he brought a lot of peace, a lot of prosperity. You continued that. You kept the realm out of problems. You kept the realm strong. You kept us out of any major wars. So maybe even if there's not any great battles or anything like that, maybe if you weren't tested or put to the test in that way, it doesn't mean that you still haven't done your job and done a great duty as king. I don't know if he really appreciates that or likes that at all. He certainly doesn't seem happy about it. Well, now we get to the next scene where the Valyrians and really everybody in the realm is coming for the marriage of Laenor and Rhaenyra. And we get to see 2 shots of dragons. They did not sit there and spell out whose dragons are what dragons these are. But I do think you can safely say that as the Valyrians are obviously coming, that this is going to be Meleys, which would be Rhaenys dragon, which is like famous for being red. This one, my best guess is that is Sea Smoke, the dragon that we already saw that Laenor rides. That's my best guess for what this would be. That's probably Sea Smoke, but they didn't lay it out. You didn't really get to see the riders, at least not that I saw. That's my guess for this. But you do see everybody sailing to King's Landing. We get to see the Lannisters coming in. We've been introduced to the Lannisters and Jason Lannister already. He approaches the king and Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra is obviously all dressed up. They're getting ready for this grand feast. There's going to be a feast. There's going to be then 7 days of tournaments and more feasting. And then finally, the marriage is going to happen. And Jason Lannister asks, hey, where's the queen? I wanted to pay my respects to her as well. Jason Lannister obviously was rejected by Rhaenyra, was trying to become the one that she wed. That didn't end up working out. Asked where Alicent sat, and they say, oh, she's not quite ready yet. We're not quite sure. Jason Lannister says, this is the reason that women don't fight battles. They'd be late to get out to the battlefield or something like that. Rhaenyra's just kind of like, thank you, Lord Lannister. Thank you, Sir Jason, and fucking get on your way. Then you also have a couple other people, including Sir Gerald, who we saw earlier, the cousin to Lady Rhea Royce, Daemon's wife that was killed in the beginning. He comes and he's about to talk about what happened. He's about to talk about Lady Rhea and what happened to her. Doesn't really get the opportunity. You see the Valyrians come in. You see Laenor, you see Corlys. They walk in. And then someone else makes an entrance. Daemon Targaryen shows up. It's clear that King Viserys didn't really expect Daemon to show up, but he shows up and it is just perfect. Matt Smith in this series is phenomenal. Anytime he is on screen, you are constantly on the edge of your seat because you know that Daemon is almost this chaotic force. You don't know what he's going to do. We don't know why Daemon is here. Why did Daemon show up to this wedding when it's clear he wants to marry Rhaenyra? Is he there to ruin it? Is he there because he actually does care about Rhaenyra and wishes her the best? You don't know. Neither does Viserys. So Viserys sees him coming in. He motions to somebody. They pull up another chair and put it right next to the table so that Daemon can sit at the table. Viserys then goes on and starts to give a speech about the joining of these 2 great houses and what this means for the realm. And he's suddenly interrupted. He's interrupted by the queen. Alicent shows up late. Alicent was not there in the beginning, and she takes this moment to walk in and interrupt the king's speech, which is not very proper decorum, even for the queen to do. And people kind of murmur in the crowd because they realize probably not the best look for her to do, probably not the best look to upstage her husband. And in fact, when she enters wearing this green dress, it does have some symbology. Now, if you have read Fire and Blood, if you know about what's coming in Dance of the Dragons, you know that green and this green dress has some very specific symbology. Now, it wasn't in this feast necessarily, but there was in the books a moment where Rhaenyra and Alicent, 5 years, I think, after Alicent and Viserys got married, when there was some tension between them, they went to a gathering, to a feast or a tournament, something like that together, and Rhaenyra was wearing this gorgeous black gown, and Alicent was wearing a gorgeous green gown. And from kind of then on, those colors became very symbolic for them. And the greens and the blacks are going to be a massive, massive thing going forward. This is a big introduction to that. And you see the Strongs, you see Larys and you see Harwin Strong talk about this as she's walking in. Larys says something to the effect of basically the color that they light on top of the tower tower to symbolize that they're going to war for the high towers? It's green. And Sir Herwin answers it's green. So this is symbolic of Alicent representing the high towers, representing her family. Even with everything that happened with her father, she's kind of making this statement that, yeah, I'm still a high tower. Just so y'all know, I'm still a high tower. And I'm going to make it known when I walk in here that this is who I am. It says we're going to join these two families and create a second age of dragons in Westeros. We get to a little dance between Laenor and Rhaenyra. Not that big of a deal, but as they're dancing, you start to see what they're setting up here. You see Criston Cole watching Laenor and Rhaenyra dance. You see Joffrey, Laenor's lover, watching them dance. You see Daemon watching them dance. So it's very interesting during this entire feast scene what everybody is doing. And it's all going to come into play later on in the episode, which I love, and also throughout the rest of the season. Now, this is Lord Hightower, the actual Lord, the head of House Hightower, her uncle, who is saying, hey, you have done really well here. I wasn't sure when your father left, when Otto left, when he got kicked out of Hand of the King, what was going to happen. But you've represented the Hightowers incredibly well, and we're all very proud of you. Kind of like what I was saying earlier, that was definitely a message from her coming out in green that way. So strong like that. There's so much that fucking goes on in this scene. But then we fast forward to Daemon and Gerald Royce. So Gerald Royce, cousin, the one we saw earlier of Rhea Royce, confronts Daemon and says, in the Vale, we answer for our crimes, essentially accusing Daemon of killing his wife. And Daemon's like, oh, those are pretty heavy accusations. Not really something you should do. You shouldn't really slander the king's brother this way. But I was meaning to talk to you anyway. You know, my inheritance. What he's talking about is Runestone, which right now is Sir Gerald's. Well, it looks like Daemon is going to take everything away from Gerald and actually go to the Vale after this is over, after this wedding is over, to petition that he get his inheritance, because he should get that, because that was Lady Rhea's inheritance first. Lionel Strong, Hand of the King, is watching everything that's going down, clearly like, oh my God, what the fuck are these guys getting into? Are we going to have like blood spilled right now? Maybe, potentially. Daemon takes a glance at Laena. That's going to come into play later. They dance. Now, whether this is a dance, maybe just because he wanted to interrupt someone dancing with her, because he wanted to make a scene, whatever, she's kind of into it. I'll just put out a little spoiler for the books. They're going to spend a little more time together in future years. She says, I was sorry to hear about your wife. He's like, I wasn't. Fuck that bitch. I love Daemon Targaryen. I cannot get enough of Daemon. Now, we get this very important scene between Joffrey and Laenor. Joffrey's looking at Criston Cole and being like, look at the way that Criston Cole is watching Rhaenyra. We know that she's fucking somebody. It's pretty clear by the way he's constantly looking at her that it's probably him. This is the dude. A member of the Knight's Guard fallen for the princess. Well, now we know his secret. He knows our secret, so we can all protect each other. That's what Joffrey says. Reality is that's probably a pretty good thing to do. Pretty sensible for them to know all these secrets about each other and be able to protect each other. Well, Joffrey takes it the next step and goes and talks to Criston Cole and's like, hey man, just so you know, I know the deal. Pretty clear you're fucking the princess. Hey, I'm the guy who's fucking Laenor Valerian. It's all good. Don't worry. Your secret's safe with me. I just wanted you to know that you've got a friend in me. You know, they're going to get married. They're going to do their thing. And we get to have fun, right? Not realizing that this is the complete opposite of what Criston Cole wants. Criston Cole feels like he broke his vows, like he's been used and abused, feels like Rhaenyra didn't respect what he did, you know, in that moment. And so that is the complete fucking wrong thing to tell Criston Cole. Now we have a moment where Daemon goes to Rhaenyra and pulls Rhaenyra away. The king is watching because he knows, he still suspects, he still thinks Rhaenyra and Daemon fucked. That's what the king thinks. Daemon takes Rhaenyra away. They start speaking in High Valyrian. And Daemon says, is this what you want? Is this really what you want? I didn't think this was something that you wanted. Laenor's a fine guy, but is this what you want? She's like, this is what it is. He says, I find myself without a wife now. She says, why don't you take me? Just take me right now. You're armed. Pull out your sword, slay the king's guard, and take me. We'll get married on Dragonstone. If this is what you want, Daemon, then take me. All of a sudden, something starts happening. A fight breaks out. We don't know exactly what's going on. All we see are people start moving, people start yelling, people start screaming, but you don't have a good idea what's going on. Is this commotion between Daemon and Rhaenyra? You finally find that Criston Cole is on top of Joffrey, the Knight of Kisses, and is just beating the shit out of him. They're fighting. Why this happened? I don't know. They don't show you what started the fight. They intentionally don't want you to know what started this fight. We only have speculation as to what exactly it was. Was it just because of what Joffrey said to him, or was it something after that? All we know is that now at the bottom of this pile is Joffrey getting absolutely shit stomped by Criston Cole. Beats him to death. And Laenor is sitting there, and he's looking at Joffrey, the Knight of Kisses, no longer will be giving kisses to Laenor. His gay lover is now dead. And Laenor's sitting there crying as everybody just kind of like parts ways and is like, oh, we should probably get out of here. With all the chaos going on, Viserys just bleeding profusely from his nose, just further indicating shit is messed up with Viserys. Criston Cole walks out in the Godswood, strips off his armor, is obviously contemplating ending everything, puts down his sword, but picks up a dagger, exposes his gut, is about to plunge the dagger into him. As we see potentially the end for Criston Cole, we're seeing a new beginning. Because even though the wedding was supposed to take place 7 days later, they're just doing it right now. Laenor's clearly very upset about everything that's happened. They're getting married right there on the spot with Viserys and with Corlys and Rhaenys watching on. As they get pronounced husband and wife, Criston Cole's about to plunge the dagger, and then Alicent says, Sir Criston, and stops him. That's all we get from Sir Criston Cole. He's been stopped from killing himself by Alicent Hightower, a new ally that he will have going forward in House of the Dragon. Right as we see again them get pronounced husband and wife, we see Viserys collapses on the ground. And the last shot we see, I think, is very, very important. The last shot we see is a rat eating the blood, basically like lapping up the blood that's right here. Now, this could have multiple meanings. Sir Criston certainly ratted on Rhaenyra. Joffrey kind of ratted as well. He was kind of a little rat in this situation when he went up to Criston Cole. But this could have potentially much more meaning symbolically. In Dance of the Dragons, there's two people known as Blood and Cheese. Cheese was the name of somebody who was a rat catcher at King's Landing. Their names are lost to history, but they were known as Blood and Cheese. Is this symbolic, this rat that potentially could be resembling that character with the blood, which could be resembling blood? Blood and Cheese commit one of the most insane, horrific atrocities of the war between the Targaryens that's coming. I think that might be symbolic of that. That's just a guess of mine. I didn't hear anybody talk about that from the cast, from the crew. One other thing I should mention, in this chaos, as people are screaming and everything, you see Sir Harwin Strong. I won't spoil it for anybody. I mentioned it in one of my other reviews about the importance of Harwin. Him coming and saving her is very important for what's to come. And that was it. End credits. I really like this episode. I think it's probably the best episode so far. We've seen so many chess pieces get laid out for this game that is about to be played for the Iron Throne. We finally set off a lot of those events and are starting to see what sides people are going to take in these events. And Alicent Hightower is going to play a huge role in what's to come. And hey, whether you're a green or you're a black, I guess that's for you to determine. I know who I'm going to be rooting for. This episode was great. It was a Game of Thrones wedding where always things are going to go bad at a Game of Thrones wedding. I think they've established that. And I cannot wait to see what we get throughout the rest of House of the Dragon. All right, guys, I will talk to you later. Peace.